suffering through postpartum with my last two pregnancies I had. So hopefully, if there's any questions, you guys can interact tonight. It would be nice to get other people's feedback and hear some other people's experience they might have had with postpartum depression. And we're going to get going. So tonight, I just wanted to touch on that because a lot of people overlook postpartum when they're pregnant, and they just think that it's just the baby blues of being a first time mom or having a baby, and you going through all these emotions all at one time, and you being hormonal. And a lot of times women, we don't address those emotions that we go through, and we just dismiss them. That is, like I said, just these things of going through, oh, I just had this baby and the baby's up all night, and maybe I'll just get past it if I can at least get a good night's rest. And a lot of times that might be the case, but many times it's that we are suffering from postpartum depression and just not looking into those different signs and symptoms that we should be looking at when after we first have a baby. So I'm a mom of 4. My first pregnancy was fine. I did not suffer through any type of postpartum depression with my son. I was pretty good. I mean, kind of got a little down here and there, but a lot of it was because I had a lot of stress being a first time mom and everything. But it wasn't that bad. It wasn't something that was something would be labeled as me being clinically depressed at that time. It was just a lot of it not getting enough rest. My son was up all night. So luckily I had a very supportive family during that time that was able to pitch in and help me out with my son. But I do feel like when I was pregnant with my twins, the pregnancy, first of all, from the gate was totally different. Totally different. Didn't feel the same. And I want to say when I had hit my 3rd month in my pregnancy, that I ended up having to go to the hospital, to check and see what was going on with the pregnancy, because it just did not feel like my normal pregnancy I had with my first pregnancy with my son. And that's how I ended up finding out I was having twins at the time. During the pregnancy, I was in my 4th month, and I ended up having a car accident. A young lady, it was an icy morning. I was at work, and I was driving back in to our satellite office, and unfortunately a young lady had ran a green, well, it was a red light, and she had sideswiped me to the point I ended up jumping a curb and hitting a pole. Luckily, I was okay, but I had hit my steering wheel of the car that I was driving and ended up having to go to the hospital and was in labor. Well, throughout my pregnancy, I kept going into preterm labor with the girls and ended up having to be on bed rest most of my pregnancy. That in itself, I was not used to. I was used to being able to get up, go around, go where I need to go. I was also used to getting up, making my own money, and at that time, I was married, and I had to rely a lot on my husband to get up and do what he needed to do to support our household. And for a while, things were pretty good. Then I had the girls. I think the first clinch after the pregnancy was that they did not have my pump for my morphine drip available, and I was in a great deal of pain after the pregnancy, and I think that kind of set off a chain of reactions with different things that happened, and it did spiral me into like depression. And then I was having a lot of complications after the pregnancy because I had to have a C-section, an emergency C-section with the girls, and the girls were ready to go home, but I wasn't, and I ended up having to stay in a hospital for 5 days. And they were threatening to send the girls home early, and my husband and I at the time were 26. You know, this was his first set of kids, even though I had my son coming into the marriage and stuff. and it was different. And I just didn't know how it would be for him to have to take these two infants that I just had home with also a toddler and try to take care of them while I was in the hospital. So that added a layer of stress on me. So fortunately, we were able to work it out, and the girls were able to stay with me at the hospital. So then when I got home, it was a lot. It was a lot because I had a 3-year-old at the time, and then I had these two brand new babies coming home. I was 26. My husband at the time was a certified nurse assistant. The money he was making, it was all right. It wasn't the best, but it was all right. Prior to me having to come out on bed rest and everything because of car accident and everything, we started getting into like a little financial bind. But at the time, it was like surface okay. It wasn't like drastically bad until he had ended up losing his job shortly after I had the girls. And I think that's when my postpartum depression started really kicking in, because I started stressing out about how we're going to take care of these kids. How are we going to take care of us? How's the bills going to get paid? And unfortunately, during that time, I started withdrawing back from a lot of things. And one of the things I did start withdrawing back from is being sexually, physically receptive to my ex-husband. I did not want him touching me. I did not want the girls around me. Some days it was hard for me to get out of the bed. I then started suffering from a lot of bad migraines. And I mean, the migraines to the point where I had to be in a dark room. Sometimes I would get sick to my stomach where I was vomiting. It was pretty bad. And I just dismissed it as I'm just stressed out. I got all this other stuff going on. So unfortunately, I never went and really got any type of mental health put in place. Plus, too, the way I was raised, Black people, we are supposed to be strong. We're supposed to be able to overlook this stuff. If we went to go see somebody for mental health issues, that it showed a sign of weakness. So I was like, you got this, girl. You'll be fine. Everything's going to be okay. I just kept getting more and more into a dark place. And I went to the doctors, but I never, I went back to the doctors for my postpartum visits and all that other stuff. But as far as like telling them, oh, I'm feeling this way, I never addressed it, because once again, I was always taught that it was taboo to be going and sitting at a mental health, any type of mental health provider, or seeking help with the mental health provider. Too, I was taught, you pray through it. You're going to get through it. And that was what the sentiment that everybody kept giving me. You just pray through it. You'll get through it, girl. Not everything will be fine. And the more I try to play that game with, I'll pray on it. I'll do my own little self-medication methods to get through what I felt was depression, and not because of me actually having a hormonal imbalance, because of me having these babies and things just weren't going back right. And then also dealing with the fact that I was just stressed out. It made things worse. And what ended up happening, me going into major depression behind that. And unfortunately, I did have to go ahead and seek counseling at that point. And I just felt like if I had got the help that I needed prior to all of this happening, then it wouldn't have got as deep as it did. And so things turned itself around. I started going to a therapist on a regular basis. And then I also had started doing some holistic stuff. Like, I really got into the gym. I really got to running. I really changed my diet. That kind of helped me out and stuff. But unfortunately, when it came to me sexually, I just did not have the capacity to be sexually aroused, to be and give really pleasure to anybody. And at some point, my ex-husband, he, was like, you just are not physically affectionate to me. And I just could not get aroused. Um, Sometimes it was like watching paint dry. And it was just, I just could not get into it. A lot of it had to do with where I was at emotionally and mentally at that point. And I think my depression overrode more of that than anything. And I just didn't want to be touched by my kids, by my husband, by nobody. I just, really didn't, I just coexisted at that point, as things got better and everything, I started feeling more better as a person and wanting to be more affectionate. But at that point, unfortunately, it was a little too late when it came to my marriage, because he started doing his own thing. So we ended up eventually getting a divorce and everything. As time went by and I felt the depression got better and everything, and it started alleviating, and so I got better. Life got better, and I got back into the swing of things and stuff. And I, eventually later down the line, after the divorce and all that, got back out there and started dating again. And my sex drive did start coming back little bit by little bit as the depression also got better. Then I had my last daughter when I was 43. I know that's crazy, but I did. I had her at 43 and love her. She was the love of my life. But I think I was already kind of in a depressed state with my pregnancy, because of the fact when I was about 18 weeks, I had found out that my daughter was going to be born with some birth defects. And at first they thought that she was going to be born with Down syndrome. So it was already, I had to deal with. And they were doing a lot of tests during that time to rule out what was going on with her. We did find out after we had some testing done that she was not going to have Down syndrome, but they had brought in some other specialists during that time, and we found out that she was going to end up being born with a Quaker anomaly. So we already was planning for that. Then, she was still at an age they wanted me to terminate the pregnancy, but I could not do it. So I just said, we're going to deal with whatever, comes about, and that's that. So I went on with the pregnancy, and over time there was some complications here and there with my pregnancy and stuff. And then I really didn't have a really great support system from her father or his side of the family. My side of the family was very supportive. And then I had her one night. Out of all my pregnancies, my water broke. She was the first my water broke. So my family, they rushed me to the hospital, got me to the hospital in time. So they ended up having to do a C-section with her. And as soon as I had her, they had to whisk her off to NICU and stuff. And so the only thing I got to see at that point in time was my baby's foot. And that following afternoon, they told me they were going to have to take her in for the first series of surgeries she had to have. And that at that point in time, because of me having a C-section, I wasn't 16 hours out. So they were like, well, we're not going to be able to let you go see her. And I was like, no, I'm getting up. I'm going down to see my daughter, because we weren't even on the same floor. And I went to see her before they whisked her into surgery. So she had to have 2 surgeries within the first 24 hours of life. She had to be in NICU at U of M for 21 days. It was a lot on me. And I was dealing with all that by myself as far as a parent, because my mom was there for me. My older children were there for me. A lot of my family members and some of my friends were there. But her father wasn't there. And there was nights he would tell me that he was going to come and see about her or give me a relief so I can go home and get in the bed. And there was many a nights he did not show up, and I was in the hospital by myself, up and down with her. I think by the time I got her finally home, and it really started hitting me that, one, this was not what you would call the typical pregnancy that I was used to, as far as me being able to go home within a day or two with my child. When I brought her home, she had all kinds of tubes that we had to deal with. And then she also had a colostomy bag that she had to be sent home with. And it was hard. And my postpartum kicked in. And it kicked in bad. And I had got so depressed, I did not want to even sometimes even look at my baby, because of I wasn't even mad at her. A lot of times I was just mad at the situation and the card that I got dealt with. And and then just everything, feeling like everything was starting to crash down on me at that point in time. And it was really hard. And to see her have to go through everything that she had to go through. And it was months after I had her, I tried to date again. But as far as like getting physically, sexually active with somebody, I just couldn't do it. And I just didn't have the desire. And it's like my sex drive was like totally null and void. I didn't want to be, I just had got to the point I didn't want nobody touching me. I had major trust issues and started becoming very paranoid, because I just felt like at the time everybody was against me and stuff. My mom, she's a registered nurse. She did try to get me to start trying to get help. But what I did find with most providers, when we Black women try to seek out help, a lot of times we're not getting the services that we needed. They kept trying to want to put me in a hospital. And at that point in time, I had the sick baby at home who had to have all these, came home with a lot of issues that I needed to be home to be able to address. And then on top of it, because of the way my job was set up, I had to end up going back to work. I didn't have the time that I needed to be able to spend with my daughter. And unfortunately, that put a lot of stress on me. I had to worry about who was going to watch her at that point. And a lot of times when we were trying to look for daycare for her so I can go back to work, people did not want to deal with her issues that she had going on. And so that put another layer of stress on me. And when I did finally get back to work, because I did not come back when they actually wanted me to come back to work, I ended up feeling like they started looking for reasons to get rid of me. And I've always been a type, I'm gonna bust my ass wherever I work at. So that really hurt me when I felt like the one place I should have been supported at, I wasn't. And when I looked at how other people at my job were supported about whatever issues they were going through with their family and their kids, I wasn't. Some of the people that I felt would have had my back and been in my corner at that time were not. A lot of my insurance did not cover her surgeries, because some of the stuff that they were saying that had to be done with her surgeries and her care was experimental. So I ended up being in a lot of medical debt behind her surgery. So that just impacted another layer. So by the time she was about 3 months, I was really bad in with postpartum depression, and I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't want to see anybody. I had got so depressed one night, I really lost it. And one of my friends, she came over with my mom, and it's like they sat there while I was crying and just trying to get me through this, and my mom did finally get me to try to go see somebody, but as I was gonna say, they kept wanting me to be hospitalized, and at that point I couldn't be. I had to be at home. I had to get to work. I had nobody really to take care of the baby. So I had a lot on me at that point in time. And a lot of people don't realize it, what I was going through. And they just took for granted that, oh, you work, you should be straight. But they didn't know all the integral things and how I had to navigate that. But when it did come to me trying to be intimate, months after all of that, it just didn't happen. It was like my sex drive was just gone, I did go into therapy, outpatient type therapy, to try to get some help with what I was going through with my postpartum. And it did work for a while until the scheduling became a conflict. Then I also had went to my GYN and tried to talk to her about some of the things I was feeling, and then to, my lack of sex drive, because I had mentioned, I noticed this was the same type of behavior I had prior when I was going through postpartum before with my daughters that I'm having with this out of this pregnancy. And I just felt like when it came to getting the assistance that I needed at that time, I just didn't get it, as far as like maybe her doing more testing to find out what was going on with me hormonally, if there was an imbalance at this time, if I needed to take any type of medication to get my hormones back on track. Especially because I was not a young woman. I was 43 years old having a baby that I just think it took my hormones in a real spiral spin. And where I feel like I was able to bounce back from my postpartum when I was younger, when I had my daughters at 26, at 43, I felt like I did not start really feeling back to Famika until really I hit 44, 45. But that big gap of time that I kept trying to call myself getting the help that I needed, I felt like I wasn't getting the help I needed. So it made me mad because, too, I felt like I was asking the providers, but why aren't they putting in for the services that I'm asking for? I'm telling them this is how I'm feeling. So where should I get the right help? And my advice to a lot of women, when you're going through postpartum depression, you have to go and really articulate to your doctors how you're feeling. When it comes to choosing a GYN, definitely make sure that you're choosing somebody that has your best interests at heart. A lot of times we go and we may pick somebody just to say, okay, I got this person to do my annuals every year. But if this person is also going to be that person that's going to bring your child's life into this world, they should be able to still be able to address your issues too at the end of the day. And if they can't do that, then you need to decide whether or not this is going to be the proper physician for you. Second, we have to be our own advocates. A lot of times when it comes to Black women, when it comes to the care that we need, our issues always seem to be put on the back burner depending on our providers. So we definitely have to be an advocate for ourselves. When I started doing more research and finding out exactly what the symptoms are for postpartum, that's when it really hit home to me that this is what was really going on with me. So really educating yourself about what's going on with you, I think, is key. And if it's a matter of what you noticing has decreased your sex drive, before it becomes an issue in your relationship, definitely address it before it becomes a ends up being a problem. And I feel like when it should have been addressed in my relationship, I didn't address it. And by the time I did finally recognize what was going on and try to address it, it was too late. So I would think, especially being new parents and stuff, we should have went and seek professional help for us, both of us, while we were going through this issue. And a lot of times those things aren't advocated. And then two, I say with us as a black woman, growing up in a family that really did not push a lot of mental health care. Mental health, we have to realize if we need the services, that's what they're there for. Yes, prayer is always good and you should be praying, but God also would not have put these people in place for us to have if he did not want us to have these people in place. So I think it's important to recognize when you need the help and being able to seek the help when it's needed. So definitely make sure that if you need a health provider, find somebody in your local area that's going to be beneficial, and make sure you check out a couple of people, because one thing I also had to learn over the years is definitely important to make sure that you're getting somebody that you're going to be comfortable with, that you don't mind confiding your personal, deepest, darkest secrets to, and that they're going to have your best interests at heart, because the last thing you want is somebody that you're going to be going to and at the end of the day you're not getting anything out of and they're not making you comfortable. If it's dealing with your sex drive and you feel like it's something emotional keeping you from being at your best sexually, then definitely seek somebody who has some type of sexual therapy certification that can help maneuver you and your significant other through that process, so that, like I said, it doesn't end up becoming a situation where you guys end up having issues later down the line because they're not being addressed now. So that's basically it for tonight. My advice, like I said, definitely be your advocate. Those are my final thoughts. Definitely be your advocate. Definitely, if you know that you need to seek out mental health services, look at some health providers and do your research to make sure that you're getting somebody that's going to have your best interests at heart. And also know the symptoms to postpartum depression, so you know when it's time and you need to address them. And those are my final thoughts. And I will see you guys next week. And thank you for tuning in for another week of Travel Coach Convos. And if you want to be on the show or you have a topic that you would like for me to do one night, please inbox me and let me know, or make a post on our Facebook page, and I will definitely take your suggestions and get in touch with you. Thank you, and you guys have a good night.